Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 938B, and today's date is April 6th, 2016, and the title of the episode is, It Has Begun Counting Down to the Next Event. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, yesterday we talked about the Panama Papers and how the Iceland Prime Minister was resigning. Well, now he's turned around and he says he's not resigning after all. And we see a lot of these leaders switching back and forth saying, I am resigning, I'm not resigning. And we see at this point that there are so many different agendas with this Panama Papers. We can see it was pushed out there by the West. There is specific agendas associated with it. We know they need to bring in more revenue into the government. They want people looking all around the world at these different leaders. They want the people to rise up and try to push a lot of these leaders out. Obama was out there talking about tax avoidance, how it's a big global problem. Well, yeah, if you notice, there are no Americans in official capacity named in these documents so far. Well, we know the corporate media, they're sifting through it, removing things they don't want out there and keeping the things they want pushed. But when we look at this, we see that the United States, it has become the world's offshore tax haven destination. Panama and the U.S. actually have one thing in common. Neither has agreed to new international standards to make it harder for tax evaders and money launderers to hide their money. I mean, Obama's out there complaining about the corporate tax avoidance, slamming Panama, but they're encouraging it here in the United States. I mean, there are certain states like Nevada, Wyoming, and others that are tax shelters. And we see right now that these Panama Papers, they've named about 441 U.S. clients which were identified in the leaks. There are about 3,072 companies, 211 beneficiaries, 3,467 U.S.-based shareholders. And of the 441 clients, the U.S. is among the countries with the most clients serviced by Mossack Fonseca. With so many U.S. clients, yet none who are connected to the ruling elite, it raises some serious questions about the nature of the leak itself. Some are saying, is this leak a strategic intelligence operation called Limited Hangout? Now, this is a favorite and frequently used gimmick of professionals. When their veil of secrecy is shredded and they can no longer rely on phony cover stories to misinform the public, they resort to admitting, sometimes even volunteering, some of the truth, while still managing to withhold certain key elements and damaging facts in the case. The public, however, is usually so intrigued by the new information, but they never think to pursue the matter further. They're just happy with the leak coming out, and they're happy with the propaganda. And we can see that this is what is happening at this point. And they're continually pushing their agenda and pushing it towards other countries. Now, as soon as the Panama Papers were released, 2 days after, we see the IRS headquarters is going to remain closed for the rest of the week because of a basement fire in the building. You think there's some records that are being destroyed at this time? Maybe, because it's very odd that all of a sudden we had a fire. I mean, we see this a lot, where all of a sudden it comes out of nowhere. And we see this in many false flags, where all of a sudden the buildings they need to take down, they take down. Basements are flooded after a hurricane. Certain offices are hit and exploded, like the Pentagon, where they don't want information out there. Now, 1 in 4 American college students wants to crush the First Amendment rights if someone is offended. Now, the First Amendment has nothing to do with you being offended, with hate speech. It is the freedom to say whatever you want. It is the freedom to speak out against your government. And if you try to control that freedom, It's no longer free speech because someone is sitting there saying, we don't like that speech because we consider it hate. We don't like that speech because there's something wrong with it. And we see this is what the U.S. government is teaching our young at this point. They're teaching them that there's certain speech that's okay and others that is not. But in a true free society with free speech, if you're offended, get over it. If you're offended, don't listen. This is how it used to be. And it seems today we're bringing up a population of babies, wimps. Even comedians are saying they can't go into college campuses today and tell jokes because people are offended by it. And there are many famous comedians that say they just won't do it anymore. And there is a huge problem in this country. And I was watching the movie V. I don't know how many people have seen the movie V for Vendetta, but I thought something that V said during the first couple minutes of the movie was very interesting, and I'm going to read what he said. He said, "The truth is, there is something terribly wrong with this country, isn't there? Cruelty and injustice, intolerance and oppression. And where once you had the freedom to object, think and speak as you saw fit, you now have censors and systems of surveillance, coercing your conformity and soliciting your submission. How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those more responsible than others, and they will be held accountable. But again, the truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror." And he's absolutely right. For us to take back this country, for us to say we want the rights, the Constitution, the freedom, we need to look at ourselves. We let this happen. Now it's time to change. Now it's time to say, you know something? We've had enough. It's time to say, okay, we know what you're doing at this point. Because if you watched the movie V from Vendetta, and I know it's a movie, there are huge parallels on what is going on today. And if you watch, you'll see that the people, they all know that the government is spewing lies. They all know the government is trying to convince them otherwise, but everyone is afraid. Everyone's sitting back. Everyone's saying, I know it's wrong, but I feel that something's not right. And everyone is scared. And that's a lot what's happening today in many of the countries, where people know, they feel it. There's something wrong in this country. There's something wrong in the world. But everyone is too afraid to do something about it. And we have to get rid of this fear. We have to strip away the brainwashing. We need to make a change for the better. Now, I'm not saying to use violence, but we need to start sticking together. We need to start questioning the government. We need to start saying, hey, we don't agree with this. And if we don't stick together as a people, if we don't come together as a people, there will be no change whatsoever. And this is something that everyone needs to start thinking about as we move further on. Because as this whole entire system collapses, and as the central bankers, the U.S. government try to bring us to war, we're going to need to make a decision. The country's going to need to make a decision on what we're going to do. Now, out in the Netherlands, they're having a referendum, and they're voting about the EU-Ukraine treaty. And the people of the Netherlands are being asked to decide whether to back a treaty which seeks to strengthen ties with Ukraine. And it seems that the Dutch voters right now, 64% of them are saying no to ratifying the EU-Ukraine deal. And this is on the exit poll. Now, of course, as you know, they can fix these type of polls. But at this point, the exit poll is showing that 64% are saying absolutely not. Now, will this affect the British exit? Maybe. And we'll have to wait and see. Now, China they are going along with the U.S. and they are placing trade sanctions against North Korea. They're stepping away from North Korea because they don't want to be involved in what is going on. And that is the United States provoking North Korea, hoping to get some type of war started and have China come in and join in on the fighting on the North Korean side. So China's saying, you know something, we're going to do the same thing as the United States. We're going to ban imports of gold, coal, iron, and everything else like that, and abide by the UN sanctions. And we can see right now, China is trying to step away. Russia is trying to step away because they realize what the United States government central bankers are trying to do. They're trying to push a war. Now, out in the Nagorno-Karabakh region of Azerbaijan and Armenia, we see the ceasefire is holding. There is still shelling going back and forth, each blaming each other. And of course, as we know, the U.S. government central bankers, they're trying to start something in this region. Now, the Pentagon is out there, Ashton Carter. He is saying that Russia is the #1 strategic threat, and the U.S. military needs to make reforms, and we need more military assets, we need more troops, and we know what this is all about. This is about getting ready for war. This is where they are headed with all of this, and they're going to continually push this. Now, yesterday we talked about Libya and the elected government in Libya, and we said that most of them were going to be stepping down and giving power over to the UN unity government. Now, they've done a 180, and they're saying they refuse to cede power to the Libya unity government, and they're not going to do it. They issued a statement calling on the ministers not to stand down and threatening to prosecute anyone who cooperates with the new government. So there's a lot of things happening at this point. We know the U.S., NATO, coalition forces, they just want to get in there. And they want to make it look like it's legal. This is why they want the unity government in there. This is why they keep saying it has to be political. No, basically what they're saying is they want the unity government in there so they can bring in the troops and it doesn't look like an invasion. And the world will say, well, the government invited them in. Well, it was their puppet government. Their puppet government is inviting them in. This is what they want. Now, the U.S. is looking to open up more fire bases in Iraq, because as we know, the U.S. is planning something very big in this region, and they're placing strategic bases. They have troops in Syria. More special op teams are headed off to Syria. And we see a lot of the coalition troops filling the void for the Islamic State that are being pushed out. The Islamic State, once again, is using chemical weapons as they lose territory. They're using chlorine gas. They're using mustard gas. And we can see at this point that it's the proxy army for the United States government. It's the Free Syrian Army, or the moderate rebels, or the opposition, whatever they're calling them today. They are the ones that are continually using these chemical weapons and trying to pin it on Assad. And this is continually happening over and over and over. Now, the Syrian government, they're going to participate in the new round of intra-Syrian peace talks right after the parliamentary elections in April. And the U.S. Department is out there accusing Assad of violating the ceasefire. Now, the question was brought up to Mark Toner saying, hey, what about the moderate rebels? They're violating the ceasefire. And of course, he's fumbling, bumbling, and he's saying, no, they're not violating the ceasefire whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, we hear the moderate rebels, the opposition, they shot down an Su-22 fighter. Now, they're supposed to not be firing at government forces, and the government forces are not supposed to be firing at the moderate rebels. But we see right now that it was taken down. Now, the United States, they're saying, well, we're unable to confirm any of this at the moment, and we'll have to really look into this to see what's going on. So they were caught once again, where the rebels, most likely, with MANPADs, took down this fighter jet. And the question is, where are they getting the ability to fire at jets? Where are they getting this type of military assets? And if this is the case where they're getting these type of weapons, this is going to change things in the region. This is a threat to any type of aircraft, some civilian aircraft. And we can see this will change things in Syria. Now, the U.S. has troops based in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, and they may be relocated in the region. Now, it might be that Israel and the U.S. are planning some type of operation in this area. Israel might be planning some type of operation on their own, or they're bringing these troops into a different location to say the troops are already there, and we're going to take 700 of them and put them into a different area to be used in this next and upcoming event. Now, what's very interesting is we can see that the military spending has increased for the first time in 5 years. So we see at this point that they increased military spending because they know a war is coming. Stockholm International Peace Research is saying that the United States are in the top spot by a ridiculous margin, spending $596 billion in 2015. Then China, then Saudi Arabia, and down the line. Because what happened was the United States started to move military assets to spend more money, and the other countries are saying, whoa, what's going on here? Why do we see more troops, more weapons? Why are we encircled? So they started ramping up their military spending. And if we look out in China, in the South China Sea, we see the Philippines. Their military spending is up 25.5%. Vietnam up 7.6%. Malaysia up 7.7%. Singapore up 5.6%. Thailand up 6.5%. And this is all surrounding China. We see in Eastern Europe, Estonia is up 6.6%. Latvia is up 13%. Lithuania 32%. Poland 21%. These are the Baltic area, and this is surrounding Russia. And yes, Russia, they have increased their military spending up 7.5%. So we're seeing there is an increase of military spending. We see that the United States, with NATO, had been bringing in more military troops, more military assets into the Pacific, into Eastern Europe, to the Middle East, and into Africa, and they're continually doing this, preparing, getting ready for war. Now, I've been looking over some indicators, and it's starting to look like in the next, and I'm not going to predict an exact time, but I will say I'm looking at this, and it looks like we are due for their next big event. And it could happen tomorrow. It could happen 3 weeks from now. I mean, if it happens 4 or 5 weeks, I'm not exact here. If I was a fortune teller, I'd be very, very wealthy right now. But I'm looking at indicators. They're pointing to another event. And we need to keep our eyes open. Now, this could happen in Europe. This could happen in the United States. This could happen in the Middle East, in the Pacific. We don't know exactly where. Most likely, I'm thinking it's going to be some type of Islamic State type of event where they're going to be blaming that on them to get something started. How big is it going to be? We don't know at this point. But all we need to know at this time is to look out for this next event coming. Now, most likely, they're going to have to increase the fear factor, because last time in Belgium, they used a bomb, and we see it, they're changing it up now, going from people shooting people on the street into bombs. This might even be a dirty nuke. Why is this all happening at this point? Because as we can see, the economy is falling apart and crashing. They were able to keep this illusion alive. Right after the G20 meeting, all of a sudden the economy started to look like it was doing much, much better. We know this is a complete illusion. They're pumping it up as best they possibly can so they can blame this next event on another group, another country. Because what they're going to do is they're going to say, look, the economy was doing incredibly well. It was recovered. And then all of a sudden, this came out of left field. These terrorist attacks have brought the economy down. And we are headed into that area at this point. And this is something we need to look at. So yes, the countdown has begun. And we see that something big is about to happen. Listen, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.